I'll say it'll happen in less than 5 years.
Well, once the whole,
no doubt in
if
my
it
mind.
flips all over to Democrats.
There, okay.
There's just no doubt in my mind it's gonna happen. I think that it's a wrong move, but it's.
Yeah, it wouldn't have clicked on the webpage.
I
It came from an email that she sent out, probably to people then maybe.
All right, gentlemen, we'll call
Okay.
the meeting to order. Please stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Additions or deletions?
We did change a few things around this morning.
Did I get it?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Did I get a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Blaine to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. City of Little Falls.
Morning, Greg.
Morning, Greg.
Morning, Greg.
Airport zoning ordinances.
So this morning, basically I want to talk to you guys in regards to the airport zoning. As you know, we've been working out at the airport, trying to get the crosswind runway reconstructed and paved. We're getting very close to doing that. We believe we'll be able to do that yet this summer. We were awarded $2.3 million from the federal government in terms of construction of that. So part of that, we were going to have to require to rezone the airport to include this new crosswind runway. Essentially what we're doing is taking the runway, it's 5 degrees off north and south. It's going to be directly north and south when it's reconstructed and paved. It'll be a little bit shorter than what the grass runway is, but it'll be paved versus grass. And we've held public hearings and public meetings throughout this process. And the last one that we had was on January 8th, where the Joint Airport Zoning Board recommended approval of this zoning ordinance. And so I'm looking for concurrence from both the city and the county this morning, in regards to that airport zoning ordinance.
What's the wish of the board for the approval?
I'll
of
make
the
a
zoning
motion for more discussion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Winchester, second by Commissioner Wilson for further discussion. Any discussion,
If I
gentlemen?
may, Mr. Chair, again, I attended that meeting in the airport, what's it called, Airport Board?
Joint Airport Zoning Board.
Airport. I mean, he kind of just asked, the commissioner and I, if we had any objection. And at the point, I just said, just as my opinion, I didn't have any more objection. I believe that's the last meeting that they'll be having.
Correct.
Over this.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, what really is the change in the zoning, in the
So,
ordinance? Would that, I guess, if we're gonna vote on changing it, I'm kind of looking for what's really
Yep.
the change?
If you look at it, I think it's B3, the exhibit B3 in the packet. Originally, back in, I think it was 94, when they recreated the zoning ordinance out there, there was a crosswind runway that went southwest, northeast. That is no longer in place. And there's also a runway where if you look on there, it says existing 1836. So the north-south one, you can see there's kind of two areas where it's blue and red on the north, where it's kind of offset. The one that's farther to the east, that one is the existing. So that one will be sunset or void once the new construction goes into place. And the one that was north-south, northeast, southwest, that one is eliminated from the zoning. So we used to have zoning on that portion. It's no longer intended to construct that, and it's no longer in the airport plan, so that is no longer in the zoning. So that's been eliminated. And then we've updated it so that the one that's going straight north and south on the page there, that one will be the new crosswind runway, and the zoning will reflect that or that alignment only.
Asked and answered. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, I was just curious if, with Steve Bukowski here from Public Works, if there is any conflict with this changing that would be viewed by Public Works on this, if he would have any
From the
comment on
landfill.
that.
Steve?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have worked over the last number of years as this developed, because it's been ongoing for quite a long time. And that have been selected here for the crosswind runway were alignments that would not impact the landfill any more than it currently does.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wincher?
Also, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I know the answer, but if you could explain like, what does this airport or runway gonna do? Is it longer? Is it gonna handle bigger airplanes? Yes, no?
So it will not handle any longer or any bigger aircraft than what's out there now. The crosswind is actually going to be shorter than the main runway. The whole intent for the crosswind runway is to provide additional coverage, wind coverage, so that if there's adverse weather or wind coming in a different direction, that the planes will be able to land and/or take off on this particular runway. So it's mainly for safety purposes, so that aircraft can get back onto the ground if they're up in the air when there's weather conditions, so that they wouldn't be able to use the main runway. The main runway is longer than this one, and so it's not as if we're gonna be able to take bigger aircraft than what's currently out there now. It's just to provide additional safety measures out there.
Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to support the Morrison County Airport zoning ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Kimmon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Next up, Public Works, Steve Bukowski.
Morning, Steve.
Morning,
everyone.
Morning, Steve.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have a number of items for your consideration this morning. The first is a request that the board would authorize the department and the director to establish and sign, when appropriate, road restrictions once the Minnesota Department of Transportation determines that they should go into place, and then we would remove them at the appropriate time when the department also removes restrictions.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Jelinski to support to authorize the Public Works Director to establish, sign, and when appropriate, remove road restrictions. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as a part of our ongoing transportation improvement work, we negotiate gravel pit agreements with private property owners for materials that may be needed for projects throughout the summer or the construction season. This request is that the board would authorize the director or an appointee to negotiate those gravel pit agreements with private owners so that we can continue that work.
Gentlemen,
I'll move on that, Mr. Chair.
I'll second
Second.
that.
motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Blaine to authorize the Public Works Director to negotiate gravel pit agreements. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next action item is to authorize the department to go out for seasonal quotes for equipment rental, bituminous materials, winter maintenance, sand and calcium chloride for use during the next season, the next year. This is a routine business that we do that ties these prices in for our use then when we need them. So we would request that the board would authorize us to do this.
Need a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Blaine, second by Commissioner Wincher to approve the Public Works Director to solicit seasonal quotes. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next two action items kind of go hand in hand. Over a long period of time, I guess it probably goes back to the mid-'80s when the county became involved and took over the landfill, and we went through a closure order with the MPCA and a stipulation agreement, and eventually permitted the operations of the landfill the way it exists today. As a part of that permitting process, we are very supportive of recycling programs and the removal of materials that are at a higher level in the hierarchy of disposal methods that the state has established, that being reuse, recycle, composting, waste to energy, and landfilling is towards the bottom of that hierarchy. And the way that we have promoted this is that we have provided grants to the local jurisdictions that then are authorized and allowed to implement their own programs within their jurisdictions under the terms and conditions of these grants. Now, as you're well aware, the city of Little Falls has made some adjustment to their recycling program, which under the conditions and terms and conditions of our grants, the elimination of glass as a recyclable would make it, their program ineligible for the grants. We have worked to try and establish a meet between the county board and the city council so that we can discuss through how we would implement this. But am requesting the board to authorize us to prepare and move these forward so that we can get everybody going in the other entities, our townships and our cities, while we deal with the city of Little Falls. We wouldn't enter into that until the county board and the city council have had an opportunity to meet and discuss how we're going to go forward with them. But other entities have their programs in place. They expect that they'd be in compliance with the terms and conditions of these grants, and we'd like to continue on that basis as we have in the past.
Mr. Chair, if I could, we'd approve, or the request is to approve the schedule as identified, even though we wouldn't be able to release any funds that don't meet those requirements, and currently the Little Falls program doesn't, but like Steve said, hopefully we're able to work through that, and then if that's the case, we could release those at some point in time, but.
When do we usually release those funds?
Well, what we'll do is once you authorize this, the grants go out, and, you know, sometimes the townships only meet once a month. They enter into those agreements. They come back. If there's any questions with them, we'll check on their contracts, who they're using, those kind of things. We'll get those answers, and then we sign off on them. And so it's probably early March that you'd see that distribution would take place.
So if
And
the
some of
city
them,
continues to not recycle what's required, then they don't get their money, is that what?
Right,
pretty much what
that's
you're saying?
correct.
All right.
What the change that they made in their program doesn't meet the grant requirements that we have with the entities to be able to do that. So they're able to do that, they're able to make that change, but it just conflicts with what the grant requirement is that we have. And Steve, just if you want to touch a little on this year, the proposal that we have in front of us is an increase from previous years. We
Yes.
did work through that during the budget process, understanding full well that the market for recycling is difficult right now. And so these numbers reflect that.
That's correct. That was a part of the budgeting process. We were well aware that costs of providing these services throughout for local units of government has gone up. We haven't made a lot of changes over the years, but this is a fairly substantial one. And the numbers that are reflected here reflect what we had in our budget for these grants. So the main one going up is the recycling grant one, which is going up about 50%. Where the other one, the cleanup day grant is pretty much the same.
Very good. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, if you will, I think it's fairly clear, at least it is to me, when the conversation with the city of Little Falls, the motion would include to execute the grants when the terms and conditions of the grant have been made. And to me, that's crystal clear.
Could I get a motion in a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we go forward with these recycling agreements.
I'll make a second for a little more discussion.
Motion made by
That
Commissioner
would be-
Blaine, second by Commissioner Wincher to approve the resolution to distribute the cleanup grants.
Both of them, Mr. Chairman? One is recycling and one is cleanup. There's
Two
two.
separate? Okay.
Yes.
So Mr. Chair, my question is with Steve, is that, so if you can agree with our current policy ordinance that we have with the city of Little Falls as far as recycling, if you come to agreement, we move forward. If not, then you would bring it back to the board and say, here, we can't make a agreement with the city of Little Falls, and therefore we'd have to decide at that time whether we continue the grant or not?
I can bring it back. If they didn't meet the terms and conditions, we just wouldn't proceed with
Okay.
distributing
All right.
funds to them.
The funds would just remain with the county. We wouldn't distribute it, is what I would view that as. I don't know that
No,
unless
it was
something
just a
would change,
comment, right.
that there would be a request for a change of some sort to the grant agreement. Otherwise, no, it would exist as it is. It's either released or not.
Okay,
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I don't want the the importance of the recycling program to be lost in this discussion that we're going to have with the city of Little Falls on that issue. I think also the fact that we've had to put some more money in this time shows the commitment by leadership within the county for this service and the importance of this in the rural sector. And I think that this county does a stellar job in addressing, waste and recycling, and should be held as a model across the state of Minnesota. So I think the correct steps have been taken place, and I don't want that to get lost in the discussion here on some other points. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Any further discussion? Now, Deb, would you like these two resolutions together or separate?
It can go together, I believe, that the recycling grant and the cleanup day grant.
So the motion and second will include the cleanup day grants and the recycling day grants. You guys good with that on your motions?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor of those motions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the last action item, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is an authorization to allow the director to sign the grant agreement where we receive funds from the state to help support recycling, household hazardous waste, and those type of beneficial programs that we provide. We utilize some of this funding to provide the grants that we just discussed, but we also use the SCORE funding. We receive approximately $100,000 annually to support the detoxification of our waste before it goes into the landfill, that being our household hazardous waste programs, getting those type of materials out of there. And special waste, the tires and white goods and those type of materials, instead of having them dumped where we've got to pick them up along our rights of way, we provide those options where they can be delivered to the landfill and recycled. What this does, we receive this money biannually. This is the first time, though, that the state is asking that we enter into an grant agreement with them. And it is, they want it to all become electronic, so it's all done electronically. And so this is what the request is, that you'd allow the director to enter into this grant agreement once we know the terms and conditions, which would be who the authorizing agents are and what the value of the grant will be.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve this.
Second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Be late.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
Just about scared me half to death.
Amy?
Thought you fell out of your chair.
Am I taking too long?
Morning, Amy.
Morning, Miss Amy.
No explanation.
Morning, Amy.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I am well, thank you.
Great.
Okay, I just have one item for you today, and that is to approve the findings of fact and record of decision for the Hardy Lake Lena Resort EAW, and then also adopt a resolution of negative declaration for an EIS. We had some lengthy discussion about this at last week's planning session, and went through the whole findings of fact and decision, so now I'm just bringing it for formal adoption.
Gentlemen,
Make a motion to,
do you want these separate, Amy, or do each one, or do them together?
I think you could probably do them together.
All right.
I'll make
Gentlemen?
that motion.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's a roll call, so probably separate.
Okay.
The
first-
resolution is a roll call, sorry.
All
So,
right. The first motion will be to approve the findings of fact and record of decision for the Hardy Lake Lena Resort EAW.
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson. Need a
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion?
Just that we went through this quite extensively at our meeting, and everything was approved, and
Yeah, and there's
and the minor changes that you recommended were made.
yes. Any further discussion, gentlemen? All in favor of that motion,
Roll
signify by
call,
saying aye.
she just mentioned roll call, if you
That's
wouldn't
what
mind.
she
The
said on the
resolution.
resolution.
Oh,
Roll call.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up is a motion to adopt the resolution of negative declaration for an EIS. Gentlemen?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Wincher, second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Just for the sake of argument, a motion for negative declaration.
Correct.
I just need to have that.
So you're making a motion to not require an environmental impact
that's what-
statement?
Okay.
That
That's what I'm
the information that was found in the EAW was sufficient to determine.
Correct, yes.
Did we get a motion in a second? We did? Any further discussion? This will be a roll call, gentlemen. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine, Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Motion carried.
All right, that's all I have for you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, for coming.
No status reports, information.
Next up, gentlemen, information technology. Ms. Gruber and Ms. Middendorf. Welcome, Amy.
Good morning, Amy.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
We're bringing forth this morning a recommendation for a website vendor to do a redesign. Let me start my slideshow.
That's not the website.
No, that's not the website,
It's
I'm
a cute one,
sorry.
though, I think
It's a start of
The
it.
citizens might like it for a day. So roughly a year or so ago, we had a strategic meeting, and during that strategic meeting, we decided that digital engagement or citizen engagement on our website is important, and communication, which is also done through our website. So we started pursuing a new website because our current one is currently around 10 years old. It's outdated. It's not built on a technology platform that's mobile friendly or digital friendly for most folks. So we would like to update it to something that will be responsive on our phones. A small team, which is myself, Ms. Gruber, and Tabitha, did some research, and we narrowed it down to 3 vendors. We looked at Data Marketing, GovOffice, who's our current vendor, and Civic Plus. And based on the discussion we had last week, our recommendation is to move forward with Civic Plus. After review with Civic Plus, all of their existing websites, and in talking with other counties and other people that have worked with Civic Plus, we feel that they would be the best choice moving forward. They're affordable. They provide a lot of the functionality that we want to provide to our citizens. And they'll be responsive and clean and easy to work with. So that is our recommendation today. And I'm bringing that forth to you.
Can we get a motion and second?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Wilson. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, didn't, Deb, you brought up something about the GeoGov, there's an annual fee of that, so that would come off the 4,500 or offset or something like that?
Yes, currently we have a GovOffice annual fee of about $1,800, I think is what it is now. So certainly that would offset in year 2 and beyond. The first year of that 27,000 is that annual fee is kind of included within that. And so, yes, that will be offset. The request is to have that one-time cost come out of our capital equipment fund, though that's a fund that's set up for things like this where it's projects that come up every now and then that we've saved for. And so we can implement those without the levy going, up and down for projects that come up that are a little bit higher cost. So we save on an annual basis for things like that. And then the 4,500 would be built into our budget and exactly like you said, offset by the current fee that we pay.
Yes, and Amy, the Civic Plus has a history of working with governmental entities, correct?
Yes, that is what they specialize in. They only work with government and city entities.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Amy, I know that this has been part of discussion, but I just want to bring it up again. Part of state law and part of the way things change, and as we know that our current system is not up to date, and perhaps is not following law or right teeter-tottering on ADA compliance. I wonder if you can touch on that just a teeny tiny bit.
There's no formal law.
But
It's a
for-
there's a guideline out there
Thank
to
you.
follow ADA.
Thank you.
Our current website is okay, but Civic Plus is specialized in ADA compliance, and as we're building the new website, we will follow all the ADA compliance regulations.
And Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, that was, there were a number of things that brought us to this recommendation, but the ADA compliance was one that this vendor really stood out more so than the other ones when it came to assuring us that we would be in compliance.
Thank you.
How about the ability to pay online? Would this be a more streamlined process than we have currently?
Today, we have a couple of vendors that we can pay online with, and they will interface with those existing vendors. If we so choose, Civic Plus has their own vendor, but those would be details we'll hash out as the project progresses forward.
There are some opportunities that if we want to, as we look at this project as a whole, bring kind of the separate approach in each of our different areas and see if there's maybe more of a streamlined approach that would make sense. And that online payment is one of those that we certainly can explore. I don't know what the end result will be, but it's definitely gives us the opportunity to be able to do that more so than our current vendor now.
Yep.
Any further discussion, gentlemen?
Well, the end result should be, this will be user-friendly for the
Correct.
public. That's the goal, to do this. The ones we've seen, there were some real nice ones out there. They got right to the point when you got to the website, what you're looking for. So, and ours don't do that.
No,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, we know we can do better and we want to.
Yep, and I would say the goal is, so it's easy for citizens to find what they're searching for within 2 to 3 clicks is always the goal. Today, that's not the case. And then also to provide any online forms or any prereqs they can do prior to coming into the building to save some time for themselves too, and convenience.
Any further discussion? This is a roll call. Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks,
Thank you, Amy.
And your little guy's cute too.
Yes.
Next up, Sheriff's Report.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Sheriff. and
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. I didn't grab my other folder.
Do you want us to sing to you this morning?
No, thank you.
Again.
I've already been threatened with Facebook Live, so I just won't go there.
Is that what you do to everyone else when it's their birthday? Is that what you're talking about?
Possibly.
Okay, all right.
If it's okay with the board, I was just gonna go into the digitizing of our documents versus going into the report right away, the monthly report.
That sounds good. We can go to that.
Okay. So as you recall, we attended a planning meeting back on November 12th, and we were talking about a company, River City Data. And what we're trying to do is get all of our paper copies of our case files digitized. And this is a company that comes to our location, picks up the files, and brings it back to their location, which is in New London, Minnesota. And then they scan all of our documents. And by doing this, we'd be able to search for the ICR number, which is the incident case report, and everything would be on file versus utilizing our current space that we have. Right now, we have a room that's full of documents, and through our remodel process, we're trying to gain that room back. And then we have hallways full of documents as well that we work around. So what we've done is we got Amy involved in IT, Mary, our office support supervisor, and this has been going on for at least a couple years, where they got some initial pricing, which was $80,000, and through their work, they were able to get that price reduced down to $32,046. So a lot of it was the search mechanisms, trying to figure out what we actually need. So if you want the Cadillac product, you're gonna pay more money. But we found out that we can get by with just searching the incident report number versus going by name, location, et cetera. So they were able to get the price reduced to $32,000. The contract was kind of in the process when we were here in November. It's been finalized. We're okay with it on the sheriff's office end. IT's okay with it. County attorney has reviewed it. They have approved it as well. And I believe you have the contract.
Yes, we do.
So what I'm looking at is just permission to utilize one of our fund balances, which is gonna be, let's see if I can find it here. It's gonna be our jail inmate account, and just utilizing the funds out of that assigned fund balance for jail programs to continue with this project. Right now, we're in the process of trying to gather up all of our items that we have on our desks, our records, and transferring them for this remodel project. So of course, that's gonna help too versus storing it and then taking it back out and doubling our work, so.
Gentlemen, can I get a motion and a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for further discussion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Winter for further discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, I probably know the answer to this question, and I might be totally off base, but you said that you are, if this all goes through, you would be able to query or look up by ICR number, not name, which I think I understand, and I believe I personally have a handle on it. So if I was involved in X of an event, whatever that might be, 10 years ago, obviously you know my name, you do in your office, you would, I assume, query my name, and my name would be attached to that ICR number. Because otherwise, how would you wouldn't be able to just dream up a number. You'd have, you have that technology for my name to find out that ICR number.
That's true, Commissioner. We'd utilize our current records management system. If we need to, we'd query by your name and/or location,
Yep.
which would give us the incident case report number, and that's all that River City Data would need from us is that case number.
Okay. And if I may,
Yes, sir.
what items are you digitizing? There are many, many things that happen at the sheriff's office. We all know that. What gets digitized?
So I have a few examples. There's serious crimes, Part 1 crimes, or homicides, 3 years of accidents we have to keep on file. And again, any Part 1 serious crimes, which could be any crime involving a weapon, serious domestics, things like that.
And what is the big benefit of this versus having a cigar box full of, or whatever, a newspaper box full of paper versus digitizing, if I may? And again, I think I know the answer, but I'm
Well,
just tossing it
number
out.
one, it's utilizing the space that it's occupying. Number two, it's just keeping our records secure. And when I mean secure, I mean in form where you can read them, so we don't have to worry about things deteriorating. And then the biggest thing is just having something on file that's easy enough to retrieve. Right now, our ladies, our clerical staff are going back sometimes daily, sometimes 3 times a week, and having to go and shuffle through papers to find things, which obviously is time consuming. Believe me, before I even came to the board, it was talking to our staff saying, okay, what can we do? Can we do this ourselves? And when we looked at the number of items that needed to be scanned and the overtime put into it and the number of years it would take, it's clearly well over the figure that River City Data gave us for utilizing their services.
If I can, I'll add to your statement. They're also digitizing more than just paper. They're digitizing audio and video. That's historical that we need to retain forever. Currently, we have 1 copy of all of these things sitting in the building. So this way it will be sitting at River City Data's center and it'll be backed up. And so we'll have multiple copies if anything would ever happen. So those are some other advantages that you're gonna get with digitizing.
Perfect. Thank you,
What about
Mr.
the-
Chair.
Yes, sir. What about the current and the future documentation? Do we do that now, or will we be doing that?
Yep, everything that we need to hold on to, that we're aware of, they'll be getting that information and everything in the future as well. So there will be a maintenance fee. I believe it's minimal, it's like $24 a month that we'll have to pay to keep their server up and running.
So they'll be continually entering the information into their servers, is that
Our
what you're saying?
Today's cases are already digitized with our current records management system. This is mainly historical documents that are paper. If there are items that we can't put into our current record management system, we can have them put it into our system.
Okay. Any further discussion, gentlemen?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
Go
Winter?
ahead, Commissioner Blaine.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Wincher. Two questions from the fiscal perspective on this. The $32,046 is coming out of fund balance. Can you tell us how much money is remaining in that fund balance after that removal? Do you know that roughly even?
I can tell you we have over $1.6 million in that fund balance. And that fund balance is from our jail program. So that's all the revenue we make from having other counties bring their inmates to our facility.
Okay. And then the $24 maintenance fee going forward, will that also come out of that fund balance account, or is that a line item within the Sheriff's Department budget?
That would be line item into our budget.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I think we can factor that in because it's
Okay.
minimal.
Yep.
But it's something I'd have to look at.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Winter?
Yeah, and I'm sure Amy or yourself, Sheriff, okay, when you take these files and you put them on digital or whatever, how are they protected? You know, I'm saying, what happens if they get lost? Do we just, are gonna store them on a chip? Could you kind of explain that?
I can talk and maybe you want to run off my talk or my comments. But from what and these guys know more about it than I do, but there's a good check and balance in place as far as inventory. We inventory all the files that are gonna be going to this company, and that company will re-inventory everything once it gets to their facility. So a good check and balance. And then I know they carry their own insurance as well to cover everything in case something would happen. But from what I was told is that the records go directly to their facility. It gets stored in a secure room, and then it's all personnel who are vetted by the BCA, or BCA vetted, that will deal with this. And we've done our homework, we've reached out to, so we found out all Minnesota courts, a few counties also utilized their services in the past, and all the feedback that we got was positive, so.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski?
if I may, perhaps over your head and perhaps over mine, Sheriff, and that's okay. So then I look to Amy and I say, there are no guarantees in life.
No.
This piece of paper certainly can be digitized and certainly can be lost. However, all of the precautions that are known to mankind, if you will, we're taking them.
Correct. So
That's-
Mary and her staff will, as he noted, inventory everything. They put them in bankers' boxes.
Yep.
River
Would it-
City Data will come, physically pick them up, deliver them to their site, lock them up. The reason this has taken so long is because we did get the company BCA vetted,
Yep.
which means they went through the whole vetting, fingerprint, background checking, meaning they can handle these files, and the BCA is okay with them handling it.
Perfect.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, the only concern I have with this, and I'm gonna assume that through your leadership, Sheriff, and your staff, who I know is very capable, but whenever this process takes place, to make sure that there's a defined starting and stopping point, so that as we go forward, you know, if we say we're going to digitize all the documents from X amount of time to this point, and then somewhere down the road, we're going to continue that process, you know, that we make sure that we don't ever leave a window there where documents somehow don't fall into, let's say, the next round of documents that get digitized. And I'm going to assume, and I'm going to believe that yous have addressed that or have this process in place, and I'm not looking to micromanage this, but in past experiences with organizations doing this, that we make sure that we have coverage there when we stop and start. So, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
We'll go to the sheriff's report.
So before we start, I just want to give you an update on the city of Randall. As everyone's aware, Randall contracts our services for patrol hours. So I just took a breakdown in 2019. We averaged 28 calls in the city of Randall a month. With that, we also averaged our own patrol time. That's where we're making a special trip to the city of Randall and/or just traveling through where we're gonna make sure that we're patrolling their village. We averaged 35 hours a month in the year of 2019. So with the average time of patrolling as well as the incidents, we spent a total of 45 hours a month in the city of Randall. That's an average through 2019. So basically, we're contracted for 30 hours. You can see we're going above and beyond. And this is just because of the number of calls and the time we're spending there, as well as the extra enforcement we're doing. So on both ends, I think it's a good deal. We're not having to call in extra officers to, specifically patrol the village. We're actually able to do it with our number of calls and just being in the area, and deputies just making a special trip to the city, making sure that's covered. So that's a good thing.
Looks like a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Monthly report, I'll just kind of breeze through this quick. The first photo you see, it's a life-saving award, and I remember I was in front of the board and we kind of discussed this. This was when a 5-year-old Avery Amstutz and her father were in a ATV accident near Cushing. And they ran off the road, went through a ditch, went into a woods, hit a tree. And if you remember, Avery suffered a broken arm herself, and her father was critically injured. Basically, Avery knew she was in danger. She had no idea where she was at. She grabbed her father's cell phone, called 911, and Amanda, who's right next to her in the photo, our 911 dispatcher, took the call. As you can imagine, the 5-year-old Avery was kind of in shock, screaming, crying, and Amanda was able to calm her down. And listening to that phone call, I mean, I'm still rattled even talking about it, but Amanda is asking her where she's at, and this 5-year-old has no idea where she's at. So this was an award we were able to present at the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. We put in a letter, the board obviously put in a letter as well of a recommendation for the Life Saving Award. And because of your actions and what we did, these two individuals received the Life Saving Award at the Minnesota Sheriff's Association Conference in December. So overall, Amanda was able to figure out where Avery was able to get emergency personnel to the scene, and because of that, her father was saved. And obviously, it could have been a lot worse if they didn't do what they did. So thank you for doing that letter.
Good job all the way around, Sheriff. Thank you.
The next photo is just our deputy, Rick Madison, bringing his canine to First United Church, where they had a Sensory Santa event. And the kids got a blast out of this. Obviously, they talked about taking these kids and going off location, trying to have some interaction with Santa. But they realized that, it's better environment just to keep everyone contained and bring in our deputy, which he did. And he brought in the dog, and it was a hit for everybody. Going over, I'll skip down to our training. We had 22 officers attend EMR, first aid, and CPR. So every year we do a renewal, and we have to be certified. So we go through a company, we go through our CPR, first aid. So you can see 22 officers attended that. 30 officers in the month of December attended use of force and taser training. So use of force is basically covering everything that we carry on our gun belt. Our baton, our handcuffs, taser, chemical spray. So we go over kicks, punches, strikes, all that good stuff. We also cover pursuit policy. We cover Minnesota statutes pertaining to use of force and deadly force. That's the time of the year where we go over all that stuff that's post-mandated. Moving on to our criminal complaints. We had 65 criminal complaints for the month of December. I'll just highlight a couple that stick out. We had 6 assaults. 2 of those were classified as assaults. 4 of them were domestic assaults. For disturbing the peace, that was 9% of 65. We had a total of 6. We had damage to property, which was 5. And we had 14 thefts, which is the green triangle, the biggest one, which was 22% of our cases. Out of those thefts, we had two of the thefts were from a person, 3 from a building/yard. 4 of them were gas drive-offs. 4 thefts were from a vehicle, and 1 was a mail theft. And then we also had 9% fraud/scam complaints, which was 6 total. Any questions on any of that? And just so you're aware that even though the thefts show 14/22%, some of these, like gas drive-offs, just because they're classified as theft, doesn't mean that it's an actual theft. Sometimes we're finding out these gas stations, the card readers aren't picking up the cards. So these people are actually going through, utilizing their credit card, but they found out later that it didn't go through. So it's classified as a theft, but at the end of the day, if they go back and pay, our records will reflect that. It's just not immediately. If that makes sense. You can see our traffic citations. We had 92. The light blue portion on the bottom, we had 67 verbal warnings, and we had 7 citations for speed and 7 written warnings. So again, our traffic citations down a little bit, but a lot of that has to do with our road conditions as well. Our 2-year comparison, all the way across the board, everything pretty much went down except for our drug investigations and total inmates, that stayed the same. Moving on to our jail information, you can see that we housed an average of 36 inmates for Morrison County. Itasca County, we averaged 6 inmates. Our total inmates was 43 to include the out-of-county inmates. Out-of-county inmate revenue, we had 12 inmates. We brought in $12,045 for the month of December. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions, gentlemen? No?
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you,
Thank
Sheriff.
you.
Good
Enjoy
job,
your
Sheriff.
day.
Thank you very kindly. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Next up, social services, Brad.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Good
Morning.
morning. Morning, ladies.
Good morning.
All right, the first thing on our agenda for social services, and the only thing this morning, is our healthcare access plan. We are required to do this every 2 years for those individuals who are in medical assistance and require drives to and from appointments. And so it's up to Karen and Cindy's unit to approve, deny, coordinate those MA drives. And so maybe I'll have Karen and Cindy just talk a little bit about how they go about that.
About the drives? Clients will call in if they're on medical assistance and they'll request a ride for medical assistance. As long as they're going to a doctor's appointment, dental appointment, we can either pay mileage for them if they have a vehicle, or we will make a referral to TRICAP. TRICAP will set them up with the most cost-effective transportation they have, either the bus, volunteer driver, whichever is cost-effective, if the client doesn't have a vehicle.
One other thing to add to that is part of the job of the financial worker is to verify that they are on medical assistance before scheduling that ride.
They also verify the mileage via Google Maps.
Correct.
And so this, as I said, this is a plan that's required by the Department of Human Services, and it's also an area in which a client can appeal if we deny a service or deny anything. So
So that's the reason we bring it before the board for approval for every 2 years, and then Karen and Cindy will submit it to DHS for their final approval.
Very good. Gentlemen, do I get a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion for more discussion.
Motion made by Commissioner Wincher,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I had a question. I know we brought this up about maybe 6 months, a year ago, about the insurance where the volunteers are required or something. Is that still in legislative where they're required to, or we're not getting as many drivers possibly because they want business insurance or something like that? I can't speak to if there's been any changes to insurance. I still do know that TRICAP is trying to recruit and retain volunteer drivers. Unfortunately, the individuals who do that are generally retired. They don't seem to be hanging around as much as they used to. But I can't speak to if there's been changes to the requirements about what volunteer drivers have to have in regards to insurance. I know it was an issue. I've not heard about it recently.
Mr. Chair? I sit on RTTC, and then I know that they're working on trying to change that with legislation, and also the AMC is also, that's on their platform on the transportation, is trying to get some of those things changed so that we can get drivers back and stuff, so.
I just would have another comment. I know from time to time commissioners have asked about, is this open to anybody? Because people in MA have access to transportation. And again, this is only for individuals on medical assistance. I think those that live in rural areas or even in town to some degree that don't have access to transportation is still an issue. And I know the Regional Transportation Coordinating Councils, the RTCCs, are trying to map those out and trying to approve transportation coordination throughout the region. So hopefully over time, that will improve.
I'd just like to add, with this plan, we also pay for meals and lodging. So if they are sent like to the cities, if we have a client going to medical care there, we can pay $50 a night for lodging, plus we can pay for their meals. And if it's a child that goes and they need a parent with, we also pay for the parent.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion to approve healthcare access plan, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you
Very
very
good,
much.
Cindy.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Karen.
That's all I have on the social service side. I do have a couple of items on the public health side, and I'd ask Sarah and Emily to come on up. We're gonna do a report on tobacco, and I know there's also been some conversation around the federal changes. And there's been some.
Morning, Sarah and Emily.
Good morning.
There is a PowerPoint in your packet that Sarah and Emily have put together, so I'll turn over to Emily and Sarah.
All right, so starting out with our review of the year for tobacco compliance, we started with our Congratulate and Educate program. This is the second year that we have participated in this program. It is a relationship building, more education. There's no fines, so this happens prior to our normal compliance checks. Like I said, no fines are given out. I just go into every establishment, whether they pass or fail, and say, you did a great job, here's a certificate, or if they did sell, then we give them some educational information as well as some additional opportunities for me to come in and train all of their staff. We do get some funding from the Department of Human Services. We get $50 for every establishment we visit. So the results, we conducted these in June. We visited every single establishment that we licensed, so there was 35 of them. Last year, we only visited 30. And then currently, we have 2 establishments that aren't selling tobacco but do want to keep their license. We did have 4 failures this June. Last year, we only had 3, but we checked 30 establishments versus the 35. Out of these 4 failures, 2 didn't request an ID. 1 failed to use the machine to scan the ID, and then 1 misread the dates. So then moving into our regular compliance checks, these are required by Minnesota state law and our county ordinance. We have to check them at least once annually. We do this to reduce youth access to tobacco products. And we held the checks on August 14th and August 21st. We split them pretty much right down the middle, so we did check all of our establishments. So with our student buyers, we had 2 students that have never participated before. There was a male, and he is 17 from Little Falls, and then a female who is 16 years old from Piers. These youth are chosen based on their interest in peer leadership at both of their schools and involvement in school programming around tobacco education. Because they were both new, we did go through a training process at Public Health, kind of going through the process, what they're responsible for, how they should behave, answering questions honestly, making sure they're not altering their appearance. And then we do some role playing so they know what they are going in to ask for, running through some different scenarios and issues that if they had their license taken, how they would handle that. So they feel prepared as they go into these establishments. Our results, we were able to check all 35 establishments and 34 passed. So we only had one failure, which is awesome. Last year, 30 passed and we were unable to check one. All establishments were open this year, which is a success. And the establishment that we haven't been able to check in past years passed, so that was also another success. The establishment that failed did misread the ID. And then we also addressed some self-serve tobacco on the counter, so they had some little Swisher Sweet cigars on the counter, and that is against our ordinance, so we addressed that at the same time, having them move those products. So overall, it was a success. We are continuing to move towards 100% compliance as our goal. We really want to keep supporting our retailers through education, and then especially with these new federal laws that Sarah's going to talk about.
And before we get into the federal changes, any questions on tobacco compliance checks?
Gentlemen?
No, that's good.
So as you can see from congratulate and educate to actual compliance, there was a significant improvement.
Absolutely.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to verify, this is in county, it's not if you're gonna go to the city of Little Falls and check on a store. This is just
Correct.
the county stores.
Correct, yep,
Okay.
it is just who we license at the
Yep.
county level.
So I will do my best to explain the two federal changes because it's kind of all over the place right now. So I will tell you what I do know and then we'll go from there. So the first one is the flavoring regulation that was passed January 2nd and was published January 7th. So that's really about those flavored pods and cartridges, which is a little bit interesting because there is the exception of the tobacco and menthol flavors. And so this is specific to things like the Juul, when we did those demonstrations and you saw those little pods for the Juul. They can still sell things in big quantities, which is still confusing to me, but it sounds like they can, if they're big quantities, they can still sell those flavored, but the little tiny pods and cartridges will be now illegal to sell.
So you can get a really big thing of cotton candy flavor, but not little things.
That's my understanding.
Perfect.
Yeah. So at this point, there's a 30-day window, so if they have any of those things in their stores, they have 30 days to sell them. So as of February 6th, they have to be removed from the shelves. However, it sounds like they can apply to sell these still. So they can put an application to the FDA, and the FDA can approve for them to be able to put these back on the shelves. So that's what this federal regulation is all about. So tobacco 21, which raises the legal age to purchase tobacco and related products from 18 to 21, went into effect around December 20th. So with this, it used to be where if somebody looked 27 or younger, you had to card them. Now if they're 30 or younger, you have to card them, which Brad and I laughed about that. I don't know how you're supposed to know that, but my thing is just card everybody. So, and that they're gonna make a lot of language changes around this law within the next 6 months or so. So they're still, trying to figure what this all is gonna look like. So right now, our local ordinance does not have the language that says any violation of federal or state is a violation of local ordinance. So right now, we don't have jurisdiction to do anything locally if somebody sells to somebody, 19, 20 years old. If we wanted to have local jurisdiction, we would need to change our ordinance to say so. Otherwise, as it reads right now, we would have to send it to the FDA for them to provide the consequences. So, you know, that's something we'll need to discuss and decide as a county if we want to change our local ordinance and have more jurisdiction over that. So that will be further discussion.
Mr. Chair, what jurisdiction do we have right now? Do we have any, or prior to the law changing, do we have anything for anybody who sells under 18? Like, did we have a? Okay.
Yes.
What were the consequences in local ordinance for that?
I have the ordinance.
I'm just curious what we did.
So that is what our compliance checks happen. So $75 for their first offense in 24 months, and then it kind of goes up from there. If they're at like 3 offenses within 24 months, then they get their license revoked for 7 days, and then after that, you know, there's just, they build on each other, basically.
So is our current compliance check still valid then, that we can do it under 21?
It is.
Okay.
Just 18 and under, though. We can't enforce anything from 18 to 20.
So the law is that you have to be 21, and so now if we do compliance checks, we're still under the premise that it's under 18, not under 21.
Correct. So when we conduct our compliance checks, we'll still take kids that are under the age of 18. And if we come across establishments that are selling, our job as local public health would be to report that to the FDA, but mainly really supporting our retailers to be in compliance of federal law.
Just one clarification, we've not talked with our county attorney or our sheriff to ensure what MDH is suggesting is accurate. So, again, we still have not talked with Brian and Sean to make sure that's the next step. But I think if it is the reality, we'd probably bring forth an ordinance change. But, so we're still evaluating that and MDH's suggestion, so.
Correct. So,
One thing I might just say is if you've walked into gas stations, there are a number of them now that currently have on their doors that they are not selling to anybody under 21. I don't know if it's consistent to all of the establishments, but I know a number of gas stations have posted that out on their doors, so.
and so this tobacco 21 does not include any paraphernalia that isn't tobacco related, so they can still sell those sorts of things to an 18-year-old. Just to be clear, like rolling papers, those sorts of things can still be sold to an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, isn't included in this at all. So just moving forward for our 2020 compliance checks, we want to not only just focus on the sale age, but also focus on those additions that we made in our 2016 ordinance, and just really looking at sampling regulations and making sure like there's no loosies sold, meaning there's no individual cigarettes being sold. Those sort of things that we added to that ordinance in 2016. We want to just do some extra looking and education about that as well.
If I may, but this is only for 18-year-old and under, even though the age is 21. Is that right?
For compliance checks, yes.
Compliance
Yeah.
checks. That's really,
Unless
sense.
we change our ordinance and then we do this in the end of 2020, then it would include those, so.
So it sounds like that'll be, excuse me, I'm sorry.
right.
That'll be a discussion that we have moving forward with you as a board, and you'll have to decide how you want to
Yep.
handle that.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Blaine.
the federal law is specific on age 21 to purchase tobacco, but, so if a 19-year-old who chooses to smoke and has his parents buy a carton of cigarettes for him, he is not breaking federal law by standing on the street corner, smoke a cigarette, correct?
Correct. My understanding is just the purchase of it is federal law.
Okay.
I would suspect that the state may look at a change to individuals using cigarettes under the age of 21, but we'll have to see if they change that.
But federal law, as it's currently written, does not prohibit utilization. It just prohibits purchase.
Correct.
Any other discussion, gentlemen? Very good. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Emily.
thank you, ladies.
Update, thank you.
Then I do have a few licenses. The first one is at a seasonal establishment renewal for Augers Resort.
Gentlemen?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The second is a food, beverage, and lodging or tobacco license change for Freedom Store for a new owner.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Blaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the last request for board action is the approval of all the 2020 tobacco licenses. These are from February 1st to January 31st. And everybody has paid. There were a couple of late entries into the game, and so they were charged a late fee. But would look for approval of all these tobacco licenses.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Winter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And that's all I have, although there is a second RBA with the same thing, so that you can just scroll past that. So that's all I have this morning.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good day.
Brad.
Gentlemen, you want to take a 5?
Sure, why not?
Take a 5.
Perfect.
I think I'll fill up with some fuel.
Hello.
How are you today?
One, Chelsea. Good.
Good. I was gonna stop up, but I was running late this morning, so I didn't. I was gonna stop up and so I'll ask you now, cause then you'll sneak out when you're done, I'm sure. Our little,
I'll leave so you guys can talk.
No, it's fine. I have no secrets in my world. Our little nonprofit project is well received by my constituent.
Oh, good.
And I like all of, I took some more time, went through, reviewed everything that you'd sent me from our other friendly county and so we're gonna, there's a couple of individuals who are looking at helping me, to try and help do this on.
Organize it. Yeah.
Well, do the application.
Oh.
So what I was going to stop and ask you, because I thought from our previous conversation, you told me that.
Sounds good.
All right, gentlemen, meeting back to order. Next before us is the extension report.
Morning, Becky.
Good morning, Becky.
Becky?
Hi, Becky.
Nathan was unable to be here. There was a funeral and he had to attend that. So I'm sure he would want to mention that he does have private pesticide training coming up in Little Falls here on February 3rd, one of the more popular extension programs that happens for him. I just wanted to mention a few upcoming activities that are going on with 4-H. Of course, we've started county fair planning already, and we've been emailing and contacting judges already. We'll be ordering ribbons shortly. Kind of in conjunction with that, I've been working with a couple other counties to provide a judges training opportunity. And while we just hosted one in Brainerd, we will be hosting one in Little Falls as well on February 25th. And that is for really anyone who has an interest in providing some unique educational opportunities for youth. And so what we're doing is we're not necessarily training a judge to be proficient to judge photography. We want them to come with us with that knowledge already. We're training them on how to work well with youth and provide that educational opportunity as they bring a project to the fair and conference judge. So looking forward to that. There'll also be one provided judges training in Mora in the end of March as well. And then some other exciting news, if you haven't heard already, I will be getting a 4-H summer intern this year. And so that process has started already. And there are 5 applicants who have expressed an interest in being Morrison County's summer intern this year. And so the interviews are actually starting up at the end of this week and all through next week. And so I'm looking forward to that process, and hopefully one of those unique young people will work out well in Morrison County this summer.
Very good. Gentlemen, any questions?
Stay busy.
I try.
An intern will be helpful when it comes to all your planning for the fair and everything
Yeah.
like that. That's great.
I am super excited about
Yes.
that, so I hope
Yes.
it works out. We'll be doing a lot of summer programming and then county fair.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, I met with Extension, and we're working on getting their new space ready to go. That's in the next phase. They'll be upstairs in the 1960s building, making sure furniture works, getting some, adjustments made. But all in all, the space that you're going to have, I think everybody agreed that will be nice and roomy in comparison to what you're doing now.
We are very much looking forward to the move.
Yes, yes. So we're anxious to get them set, and they've been very patient and very accommodating when it comes to the interim. So I appreciate that with the staff for sure. But Suzanne was in, and all the staff that's housed here, and we took a look and walked around and made sure they're set up for the future. And while adjustments will be made throughout, I think it'll be good for staff, and they'll have some room, and they won't get shuffled aside like they have for a while. So thank you.
Looking forward to the permanent location, yes.
Mr. Chair, I just got one question. Where does the intern, Becky, come from? Is it a high school kid? Is it a college person? I shouldn't say high school kid, a high school student? Or a college person? Or where does the intern come from?
So the process, which is actually run through the University of Minnesota as a whole, and they kind of look over and supervise interns for the entire state in the 4-H program. And so there's lots of applicants, but their criteria would really like to see a college student with 2 years of college experience, but that has not graduated from college yet.
Very good.
And so that's what we're looking for, hopefully to give them a little bit of a taste of what extension work would have to offer them, as well as helping me out this summer.
Excellent, thank you. Good answer.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Becky.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Auditors report. Chelsea? Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Chelsea.
How are you all?
Wonderful, thank you.
Good. I have a few things for you today. The first one on the agenda, I'm requesting approval for the 2019 annual audit engagement letter from the Office of the State Auditors to conduct our 2019 audit.
Gentlemen,
I'll make a motion.
Second.
got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Wilson. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next on the agenda, I have 2019 county application for voting equipment grant. This, I'm requesting a motion for approval. The state has an additional $2 million that was appropriated for the voting equipment grant account, the Vega account. And the Minnesota Secretary of State's office is currently soliciting applications. And so, in front of you today is our application for the voting equipment grant. Again, this is like the grant that we received for voting equipment in 2017. This, we're specifically asking for assistive voting devices. This application kind of goes over multiple things that it can be used for, but we purchased new equipment last year, so we are specific to one piece of equipment for this application.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Winter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question? Is this going to be for the next election, or do you know what the approval process is, or is there existing equipment for 2020 and this would be after?
So right now, currently, we're using auto marks that were purchased in 2006, so we'll continue to use them this year. But we will, if we do get dollars off of, from this account, we'll have to spend those dollars within 2020.
Okay,
So
so
it
it would
wouldn't
be
be
ready for the-
implemented until 2021.
Okay, I was just curious. Thanks.
Is there a maximum dollar amount for each jurisdiction?
There is a maximum amount of $5,000 per precinct, so that is on the application here. So the max would be $240,000, but since we're only going for one piece of equipment, it's $120,000. And again, we have to match 50-50, so it'd be $60,000 from this account. Whether we get that amount or not is up in the air, depending on how many jurisdictions apply.
Okay. Do we still have funds available in our election equipment fund?
So for the county budgets every year in the equipment fund, yes. But as far as the voting equipment grant money that we received, we spent all of that money in 2019.
Very good. Any further discussion?
You kind of lost me when you say there's a maximum of 5,000 per precinct, but yet we have for 60,000, or a maximum match of 60,000? I don't understand. Why would we get 60,000 when there's only a maximum of 5,000
Sure.
per precinct?
So this application, it goes over multiple things. One of them that you can use these dollars for is poll pads. And so last year we received dollars in 2017 from the grant fund, and we purchased our poll pads last year. So that is why we're not requesting additional dollars, is because we already purchased that equipment.
We have 48 precincts with 5,000 per precinct. That comes to 240,000, but we only need 120,000 for your piece of equipment, and we have to pay for half of that.
Correct.
saying?
We're asking
We're
what we
asking
would
for 60.
utilize.
But there's a maximum of only 2 million for the whole state.
Yes.
So if you take that times how many precincts there are, there's not much money there.
And Mr. Chair, I think I misunderstood, maybe I didn't understand correctly. Do we have that match? Should we get what you're looking for? Do we have that match in the checkbook right now?
Yes.
That took care of it.
Any other discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next, I have a resolution in conjunction with this application to approve for the 2019 voting equipment grant application. So in order to submit this application to the Secretary of State's office, we have to have a resolution joint with the application.
Gentlemen,
So moved, Mr. Chair.
motion made by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Year-end balances.
So next in front of you, I have a snapshot of our year-end bank balances. This is something that I bring to you quarterly, so this is as of December 31st, 2019. So it's just, again, a snapshot of our liquid accounts on the top. And then we have special accounts and investments. So the bottom portions are CDs, which is tied, it's not our liquid money. And then the top portion is our liquid money that we can move around. A couple things from last year, again, that we changed is we invest with Magic in their CDs. We just had the liquid accounts, so now we have investments with Magic. We also have Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union as a bank with a CD, and we also have a little bit of room with Unity Bank with the CDARS program. Just kind of a background, last year we had investments, we had 22 investments that matured, and on top of that we had 15 investments that were called on. So just to give you an idea of how many investments come due, and then in 2020 here I have 29 investments coming this year, and 3 are callable, so I could have a total of 32. So it keeps me a little busy.
Like that.
But those callable ones we're kind of going away from?
Yes,
Yeah,
so
that's what-
last year we had 15 that were
Yeah.
called, and that was the majority of them. So now we have 3 that are on the list that could be callable. So we'll see if
But
they
a-
get called
But
on.
as we move forward, we're, if I understood right, as we move forward, we're kind of going away from callable investments.
That is my practice, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I
Commissioner
may, I'm not trying to create more work for you or your office, Chelsea, but, and I know myself and the other commissioners appreciate this quarterly report, but I'm just curious if it would be possible where we could see the previous quarter or the previous, in this case, 3 quarters, to see how these numbers change quarter to quarter across the year, if that would be possible. And I'm not saying necessarily on each account, but even if we could see
Bottom
the
line.
changes on the totals for each of those 3 divisions, if that would be possible.
Sure, I can do that. One thing that's interesting over the time or over the year is our accounts are kind of like a roller coaster, because when tax dollars come in and then they are dispersed out to the individual jurisdictions, you will see that throughout the year. Another thing that I could bring on top of that is showing you what I utilize for investments, because this is very minimal compared to what I work on a daily basis for our investments. You can see the dollar amounts here, but you can't actually see what bank it is, and what the dollar amount is on that, if that makes sense. So if you have a, let's see here. So we have Wells Fargo CD investments, and we have over 5 million. Well, I have multiple CDs in Wells Fargo, and within that, it states Morgan Stanley Bank. It says Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo. There's multiple banks, Bank of India, whatever it may be. So those are on another spreadsheet that you have probably not seen, which I can bring forward so you can see where we have our investments and what dollars are holding there. And of course, it changes monthly, so.
Any other questions?
So, in conjunction with where we were at December 31st, normally I bring forward to a quarterly interest report, just the last 3 months. This is a snapshot of the last 5 years and all of the months with interest that we have accrued. So, 2019 was, of course, our highest, and I don't know if we will hold that point in 2020. We also have extra dollars for building fund, so that makes a difference on our interest numbers, and the rates are dwindling slowly, so we'll see what 2020 brings.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that with us. Any questions on that, gentlemen? Commissioner Winter?
Yeah, Chelsea, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the unpaid taxes, is there the same amount that's rolled over every year? Like you have 2018 as a dollar amount, 2019 a dollar is a portion of that keep rolling over, where I know some people just don't pay them on time?
Yes, I am getting to that. That's,
you are.
Where is he?
That's a couple slides ahead, but yes, I will go into depth on that,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Trying to be the golden boy here again, we're.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm just scrolling down.
All right, anything else on this, Chelsea?
Just in front of you, you have the cash report. This is a report that comes to you monthly. And again, I'd just like to highlight that this report that you see here, we balance monthly, Steve and I, with the cash book to this report. So this is our checks and balances.
Any questions on that, gentlemen?
Good work.
And now,
And now,
let us transition to
unpaid
this
taxes.
unpaid taxes.
I have a question about that. No, just kidding.
So in front of you here, we have Morrison County unpaid taxes, and it shows the payable years. In 2019, we're under 3%, which is awesome. Morrison County's taxpayers do a good job of paying on time. With Commissioner Winter's question to the unpaid tax dollar amounts that are on here, do they roll over from year to year? Yes. So what I want to explain is in this total delinquent amount, we have a little over 80 confession of judgments, and what that is a payment plan for individuals if they can't pay their taxes on time, and if they're almost to the forfeiture stage, then we have a payment plan for them. So that is in conjunction in with the delinquent amount, because they are truly past due amounts. And this also adds with 2019 late taxes. So my office will be sending out late notices here. The end of this week, we have roughly 650 parcels in 2019, just for 2019 tax year, that maybe were paid late or have an outstanding balance. So they will get letters as we need to move along with our process on the delinquent and moving into the forfeiture.
You answered my question, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Great.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's important to note too that the penalty, interest, and fees are set by statute. It isn't something that's individualized county by county. They can add up, but it is identified across the state of Minnesota what those are, and it comes from the legislature, not from local decisions.
Any other questions?
I would like to add the fees. Going off of what you said, the penalty and interest is set by statute. The fees is set by our county with the delinquent fee that we have. So if they're delinquent and if they're not paid by February 15th, there is the delinquency fee added onto that parcel, because we have to manage that parcel quite a bit throughout the delinquency process, sending out late notices, filing it up in court. We have to file a judgment, publication in the newspaper, which that fee pretty much costs what it costs to publish and manage, and then going forth if they're continued years on in delinquent. So
It's typically the same though, isn't it, across jurisdictions, or do you see a lot of
Yes.
variation? I was gonna say, I
yes,
think, I
and
remember it being just kind of
the
the
fee that
same.
we have, I believe it's $25, is not. It's very minimal compared to how much we do on touching this piece of property as it's delinquent.
And county by county, are they typically about that, about $25, or do you see a lot of variation with that? I'm trying to remember.
There's
way
a
back when.
variation.
There's a variation with that.
Yeah,
Okay, I
some
was
are
wrong.
much higher. We put our delinquency fee on in February. Some counties put their fee on right away, January 2nd. Really, we put our fee on for publication. I mean, we will monitor our delinquent report all the way up until we have to cut off that line. And we don't like to add a fee if we don't have to, because it's just another cost, and really we're just trying to cover the cost of publication in the newspaper is really what it is.
Thanks for the correction.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So Chelsea, if I'm on the late fee program no, excuse me, if I'm on the program that's set up, so I'm paying so much a month, am I paying the late fee also?
Yes, there will be a one-time late,
that's-
or a one-time fee.
For late, but I'm on the payment plan, so I'm gonna pay that fee also,
So there is a payment plan fee, $40.
and a late fee, or it's really not late
So-
because I'm on a plan?
Okay, so if you're late, so in 2019, if you didn't pay your taxes in 2019, in 2020, there will be a fee associated with the delinquent.
Okay.
Normally, when you go on a payment plan, you're either 3 to 5 years delinquent.
Okay,
And so at that point, you would pay a confession of judgment fee of $40. And then going forward, you would have interest on top of that amount. There's a payment plan, and then the interest is set by statute.
very good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Blaine.
Chelsea, the communication that the county has with delinquent taxpayers, property owners, is either publication through the newspaper or notice through the mail. Is that correct? Is that the only communication that we have with delinquent taxpayers, or the only means of communication?
So we have those two, and we also have it published on our website. So there's a listing of all delinquent taxpayers and the amounts due on our website.
We don't, thank you, and we don't spend time tracking these people down on the phone or going to these properties or anything like that, correct?
I have made phone calls. No, we do not go to their properties, but I have made phone calls when it gets down to the wire and I can find a phone number in the phone book. I will give a call. When we have time, we do try and reach out as much as we can. We are on top of it. For delinquent taxes or late taxes, if you will. So your first half is in the spring and we send out a late notice in June. So hopefully, you would get your notice and pay first half or have it on the radar. And then October, November, second half, we send out a late notice in December. We send out a notice in January, and then we send out another notice in March for that 2019 year or that last year. So we send out quite a bit of notices that we are not mandated to, but it's a respect between us sending out those letters. So at the end of the year, in January, February, they don't get a notice that they missed both first and second half taxes. We're sending those notices right away so the penalty and interest doesn't accumulate.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Chelsea, am I correct with, it's only the first year that's published, though, the first year delinquent? So if you remember, or if you've heard people, publicly identifying that you haven't paid your taxes is a good motivation to get those paid. And I think that's why real estate collection numbers are so low. But it's only that first year delinquency that's published. And then, so if they remain delinquent years prior, it doesn't continue to be published. And it's not communicated with as you go. It's just that first year.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chelsea.
And last but not least, I have a request to pay the bills.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve the warrants.
motion by Commissioner Blaine. Did I get a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilson to approve the bills. So roll call. Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you,
That's
Chelsea.
it. Thank you, Chelsea.
Do you want to grab Commissioner Blaine's roll call?
You better ask me for my vote.
Commissioner Blaine?
Commissioner Blaine votes aye.
I thought I started with you. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Totally fine.
Thank you.
Just
Chelsea caught me.
Hey,
Thanks,
okay,
Chelsea.
Yep.
Have a nice day, Chelsea.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Next on the agenda, administration, Ms. Gruber.
I have a few things. First is the appointment request for county residents to serve on the Extension Committee. There are 3 that are coming due: Leah Schilling of District 2, Dave Solinger of District 4, and Daryl Larson of District 5.
I'll make that motion.
Second that.
Motion made by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Wilson to approve the appointments. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, approve Central Minnesota Emergency Medical Services Region Joint Powers Agreement.
Yes, there's a change to the Central Minnesota Emergency Medical Services Region Joint Powers Agreement. That is a mouthful. Commissioner Jelinski sits on this board. He is aware of that. County attorney was made aware of it also. I believe it's the primary point or the primary premise of the change is that a couple of jurisdictions got out, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Jelinski. And so then that changed to the wording and verbiage to reflect those changes. I don't believe there's any opposition from you, Commissioner Jelinski, and certainly the county attorney was fine with the changes.
No, and Mr. Chair, if I may, it was Sherburne County opted out, which is perfectly fine to do. And anytime that there is anything done with the Joint Powers Board document here, that then goes to every county that is a participant, reviewed by each and every county attorney, and then goes back to each and every county board, which is checks and balances, I guess, to approve or disapprove. I can safely tell you that the EMS Joint Powers Board absolutely is in support of any change that is here.
Can we get a motion from the floor to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by, need a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, Mr. Chair, and then I have Melissa come up and talk a little bit about our pay equity report and what this is. It is a report that is due in the state of Minnesota every 3 years for public entities. And so the time came for us to do this, and Melissa worked on it. If you want to talk a little bit about the results and what we need.
Sure, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Like Deb said, Minnesota state law requires all public jurisdictions to eliminate gender-based wage inequities, and in 1992 is when pay equity came about. So, like Deb said, the counties are required every 3 years to submit, and we are required this year to submit for 2019 wages. So we have to submit a report to the Minnesota Management and Budget that lists out every single class title, so that's every job title, and then the number of females and the number of males in each of those positions, the amount of years it takes them to hit the top of the wage scale, and then the minimum and the maximum wages. And then what that report makes is a test to the Minnesota Management and Budget. That's 3 different tests that we are graded on for our wages. The first section is the completeness and accuracy of the test, which we've submitted, we've reviewed, both Beth and I, and then Deb also has reviewed it. Second test is the statistical or alternative test, and that compares the salary data to determine if female classes are paid consistently below male classes of comparable work. So each of our jobs are rated on a point scale, and so they'll list out all of the jobs, all of the point scales, and you're rated within 10% of each title. Our ratio landed at 113.22, and any result above 80% is considered passing, so we passed in that section. The third test is the salary range test, and that compares the average numbers of years required for female classes to move through the salary range, consisting of time, phase, step, progression to the average numbers of years required for male classes. We scored 100% in that section, and results of 0 or 80 and above are passing scores. So again, we passed in that section. And then the last section is the exceptional service pay test, and that compares the percentage of female classes receiving longevity or performance pay compared to male classes. And we scored 0% in that section, and results of 0 or 80 and above are passing. So again, we passed in that section. So to the best of our knowledge, we will pass once we submit it.
Mr. Chair, just there's a lot of work that goes into this. as we've talked about, the systems that we have to manage people are all over the place. And so Melissa was working off of a spreadsheet and then comparing it to another spreadsheet and a Word document to get all of this pulled together. It's one of those things that when we look at it, kind of an overall system would be helpful, but we got it done. And we spent a number of days on this, and then we reviewed it and then spent some more time making sure everything's correct. But once every 3 years, we need to send this in and get it taken care of, and we're ready to do that.
Very good. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Next up, construction update. Mr. Philippi, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Mike.
Good.
Hello, Mike.
Welcome.
Morning.
Do you have a drawing with colors? No. Oh, okay.
Good morning. I just handed out the latest budget. And I guess kind of the one I always focus on is going down to contingency. It's kind of what's left in the coffers. So, and where we're sitting there, I feel real good with where we're at on the project, so. Right now, we're currently working security upgrades up in the courts level. We're taping up there now. We're gonna be painting later this week. Cabinets will go in on Monday of next week, and then we'll start carpet. And that'll be a nights and weekends thing, but we'll start that next week also up there, so. And then in the 60s building, we've gone through, we've demoed the walls on the main level of the 60s building, and they're currently taking asbestos out of the upstairs, prepping on the main level, and then they're also doing glove bags or pipe wrap to remove the fittings on the heating pipes also down there. So they figured they'd be done at the end of next week down there, where we can continue with the demolition on the main level, so.
And Mr. Chair, we are due to start temporarily relocating the sheriff's office personnel in the next, couple of weeks, actually. We'll
Yep,
start
in
after
the next couple of
February.
weeks, we'll start slowly moving people, and then we'll move dispatch the week of the 17th. And then anything remaining will be the week after that, so we can get started over there.
Yep. As you can imagine, there are a number of moving parts when it comes to relocating dispatch for a temporary time. And so we're working with a number of different vendors, and IT has been very busy on helping coordinate that to make sure everything is ready to go and works, because it's not an option for that not to be the case. And so we're working on that, and the sheriff's office front desk will occupy that kind of what we've used as swing space, that old administration area up there, and it's worked out nice to be able to have that during this time period. They'll move up there, and then the command staff and deputies will be located down here again, which has been nice to have that swing space available. It's allowed us really to keep going in terms of advancing the project, and so that'll be happening in the next number of months. Lots of moving parts again, but we're kind of entering that final-ish phase.
That's
So
right.
it's been
Yep.
good.
Oh.
Any questions?
Any questions?
No surprises in the demo in the 60s building?
No, at this point, all we've taken down is the walls. We've got to leave the ceilings in until the asbestos guys are completed, so all we've done is take the walls out so they could access the mastic, and so nothing at this point, no. So, no.
All right, well, thanks, Mike.
And Mr. Chair, we have a building committee meeting after the planning session next week, and so we'll go through kind of some of those other remaining or additional remaining items for your consideration when it comes to work and scope and such. So we'll meet after the planning session next week.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Committee reports. Commissioner Wincher?
What dates?
So we actually have 3 weeks because we have 2 planning sessions and it always goes through a board week. So it's January 26th through February 15th.
Okay. All right, let's go back here. On the 27th, we have a planning commission at 7 PM. And then I believe Commissioner Jelinski, we have an extension meeting here at 5:30 on the 27th. On the 28th, there's a planning session at 8:30. And again, we have the building committee meeting after the planning session on the 28th. On the 4th, we have a planning session at 8:30. TSWAC, and that'll be at the landfill at 8:30. On the 7th, we have board at 9 o'clock on Tuesday. Department head at 8:30 on Wednesday, the 12th. And Commissioner Lemire, that's what I all have on agenda.
Very good. Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, starting on the 27th, right? 26th, 27th? 27th at 9 o'clock in the morning, I've got a SECB Regional Leadership Meeting at the MnDOT Building in St. Cloud right off of 15. At 3:30 that same afternoon, I've got Stand Up For You. On the 29th at 11 o'clock in the morning, Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee, followed by the full board. At 6:30 that evening, I believe we have a city-county meeting, and I believe that is here.
It is. I'm still waiting on confirmation yet. I had asked Mr. Rademacher, I thought we were confirmed, but I asked John if that was the case, and he was indicating he was going to reach out to the council and ask again. So I don't know for sure what that means, but I'm hoping we can meet. We've been wanting to get something scheduled, and so I would go with the assumption I'll let you know if I hear otherwise, please.
And at the airport meeting, they asked, are we still on the 29th? I said yes.
Okay, good. I hope so. I assume we are. I just.
Greg's okay, asked me that.
Yep, I had asked, I actually just sent John a message earlier during this meeting, making sure it was verified, and I haven't heard back from him
And
yet.
Mr. Chair, I'd appreciate, Deb, if you'd maybe shoot out an email to us that it's confirmed on the 20th.
Will do. As soon as I hear from the city, I'm waiting myself.
On the 30th, I've got a SECB Legislative Committee conference call that's held at my house. The 31st, 10 o'clock in the morning, got a EMS Joint Powers Board meeting. This month, it will be held at the Stearns County Highway Department. On the 3rd of February at 6 o'clock PM, there's an EMS Town Hall meeting at Camp Ripley at Building 1577. I'm not sure where that is. On the 4th, there's also a Board of Adjustments meeting at 7 PM. On the 5th, I believe I'll be attending a FirstNet Road Show. It's at the MnDOT facility in St. Cloud. That starts at 9 o'clock. On the 6th is a legislative conference call at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that's it.
Commissioner Blaine.
On Monday, the 27th at 4 PM, we have Rural Finance Development, Morrison County Rural Finance Development Committee meeting at Pine Country Bank. On February 4th, on Tuesday's February 4th planning session, I'd asked to be excused. I'm going to be taking a training that will take me out of town, and so I'd asked to be excused from that planning session on the 4th.
Okay.
On February 12th at 3 o'clock, in Staples, we have a Morrison Todd Rodina Community Health Board meeting at Sourcewell. And that would conclude me.
Commissioner Wilson.
Okay, the only thing I've got to add is on the 6th of February, CMCOA Board in St. Cloud, or Sartell, at 10 o'clock. And also, I'm meeting with Barrett's at 10 o'clock on the Nathan from the Extension Office to talk about alternative crops and stuff. So
When is that?
that's on the 10th, but that's just for me.
And where is that? That's gonna be at community development?
No, it's going to be at Barrett's, but
Oh, at Barrett.
Good?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh.
that's it.
All right. 28th, HRA, 1 o'clock.
I'd love to be
We will we can get.
Did somebody say T-Schwack on the 7th? Okay. 10th, the Yellow Ribbon, 5:30,
And where is it?
Cabin Fever.
Okay.
That's it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blaine, on that tri-county meeting, that's just for you, that's not that semi-annual thing that we go.
No, no, this is the Community Health Board that Commissioner Wilson and I sit on.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, just thinking about that, that should be coming up in the
Right,
next.
that's the one in Wadena. I'm talking
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think
Yes,
I
sir.
missed two. On the 11th of February, I've got a Toward Zero Death at Public Health. I forgot which conference room it's in. And the 14th, there's an armor rack meeting in Alexandria at the fire hall. I don't often always attend those, but I do.
Is there a trails on the 13th?
I'm sure there is, and I don't have that listed down. That is at Sylvan Township Hall this month. Thank you for catching that.
I'm gonna pass them down, please.
That it? Being no further business, we get a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Being adjourned.
Good job there, Mr. Chair.